Hi everybody. Welcome to this class on the Heart Sutra. This is part of a series of classes on traditional Buddhist chanting, and we've been spending 2 months at a time on a particular chant. We spent 2 months on the homage to the three jewels. No, wait a minute. The first chant we did was the Jijang Bosal chant. And then we spent 2 months on the homage to the three jewels. And now we're having our final class on the Heart Sutra. So we meet twice a month on the first and third Tuesdays. This is the third, is it really the third Tuesday of, yes it is. It's the third Tuesday of August, August 15th. And so we're going to talk about the Heart Sutra again. We had the first class focused on, what was the first class? The first class focused on, let me look at my notes. Geez, I'm really blanking now. I have them all right here. We did a class on the mantra, right? That was the second class. The third class was on where are my slides, man? Okay, let me look at some slides. Okay. Oh yeah, so the third class was on what is Prajnaparamita, which is also kind of the subject for this class. So the first class was on what is the Heart Sutra? What kind of a sutra is it? What is a sutra? Where does it come from? The second class was on the Heart Sutra mantra. The third class was on, what is Prajnaparamita? And this class is on what does it mean to practice Prajnaparamita. So in particular, just the one, 8, I think it's 8, maybe 9 characters in the Heart Sutra, where it says practicing while or when practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita. Although it's also sometimes translated as when practicing the profound Prajnaparamita. So the word that can be used as an adverb to modify practicing deeply, can also be used as an adjective in Chinese to modify Prajnaparamita. So the practice can be deep, or the Prajnaparamita can be profound. And I think they're both true, right? Anyway, but we're going to chant the Heart Sutra first as the first thing we do in this class. And so I am going to, let's see, I'm going to try to share my screen now. And let's see, what do I have here? Oh yeah, good. All right. Here comes my screen. We're going to chant the Heart Sutra. The words the Heart Sutra will be put up on the screen are the words of the Sino-Korean Heart Sutra. And let's start now. 1, 2. All right, now let's start looking at some slides now, and let's see if I can. My my computer display is giving me a little bit of a problem, but you know, I'll deal with that. So, if we practice Prajnaparamita, we will perceive that all 5 skandhas are empty and be saved from all suffering and distress. That is the teaching of Xuanzang Bodhisattva. Xuanzang is the name of the Bodhisattva who gives the teaching in the Prajnaparamita, in the Heart Sutra. Right, here we go. So Xuanzang is also known as Kwansin Bosal, as Avalokiteshvara, Kuan Yin, Quan Yin, Kanzeon, Kanon, and many, many, many more names. If we practice Prajnaparamita, we will perceive that all 5 skandhas are empty and be saved from all suffering and distress. This is a teaching of Xuanzang Bodhisattva, and she teaches this based on her own experience. So at the very beginning of the Heart Sutra, it says, this is what she did, this is what she experienced. So how do we do that? How do we follow her example? So she's giving a teaching, but more importantly than really than the words that she teaches is the example that she has already set through her practice and through her attainment by her practice. So how do we follow her example? Well, one way is to recite the Heart Sutra a lot, I would say. And also we should study the Heart Sutra a lot. And we're going to talk about that. What does it mean? So I'll talk some about reciting the Heart Sutra. What's that all about? Sutra recitation in general. And then in particular, how do we study the Heart Sutra in a way that is practicing Prajnaparamita, not just some sort of intellectual bookish study, cramming for a test or something, but how do we study the Heart Sutra in a way that is the practice of Prajnaparamita? Prajnaparamita, after all, is wisdom, and for those of us who are not enlightened, the practice of wisdom does entail learning things, okay? All right, now I'm going to make myself smaller. Try to. There we go. Nice and small. Out of the way. And so you can recite the Heart Sutra anytime, anywhere. And it's much easier to do that if you have it memorized, so it's a good idea to memorize it. Now, if you're watching this, I have a version of the video that we played at the beginning of this class where we chanted the Heart Sutra together, where the lyrics, the words, the transliteration of the Sino-Korean Heart Sutra was displayed on the screen, along with the Chinese characters and the Hangul as it's written in Korean. And I have a version of that video that's small enough to send as an email attachment. And so if you're watching this video and you want a copy of that, please leave a comment. If you're seeing this video on YouTube, I'll leave a comment, or send me an email. My email address is steinmetz.kurt@gmail.com. I might put that somewhere on a slide somewhere, maybe at the end of this if I remember. And I'll send it to you. And so how do you memorize the Heart Sutra? By doing it over and over again. And it's really good to have a recording. And I especially like to have recordings of chants and mantras that play, and that have a video part of the recording that displays what you're chanting on the screen, so that you can chant along and you have the lyrics, the words being displayed in time with the chant. So reciting the Heart Sutra is a very strong practice, whatever a strong practice is. I mean, a strong practice means something that you can connect with, something where you can get some traction, I would say. Any kind of sutra recitation is very beneficial, and this is a central idea of all schools of Mahayana Buddhism, including Zen. Sometimes people have the mistaken impression that sutra recitation is somehow un-Zen, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Sutra recitation is a way to practice what's called the three recollections. Recollections is one of the most ancient teachings of Buddhism, going back to the time of the Buddha himself. He taught this to his students. And the three recollections are the recollection of Buddha, the recollection of Dharma, and the recollection of Sangha. That is, it's the recollection of the three jewels, and it's a variation on the theme of taking refuge in the three jewels and making the three jewels central to your practice by making the recollection of the three jewels a practice. Another name for recollection is mindfulness. So in Chinese, this character here is the character is pronounced in Mandarin something like Nyan. In Korean, it's pronounced something like yum. And in Japanese, it's pronounced something like nen. One of the advantages of the Japanese language is that the sounds of the Japanese language are actually fairly easy for an English speaker to approximate, much more so than either Korean or Mandarin. This is the nen. This nen here of mindfulness, this is the nen in the Kanzeon chant, which is the next chant that we're going to be doing in this series of classes. In the Kanzeon chant, we say nen jushinki, nen fudishin. This is mindfulness, concentration, attention. Sometimes this is translated as attention. There's a story it's an apocryphal story without any basis, but it's an interesting story about a famous Zen master, Ikkyu, who wrote about him writing a calligraphy that says attention, attention, attention. And this is the character that Ikkyu is writing in that story, although Ikkyu probably never really did this, but it's a cool story anyway. Sutra recitation is mindfulness of Buddha because it is the words of the Buddha. A sutra is the words of the Buddha. And since it's the words of the Buddha, the teaching of the Buddha, it's also mindfulness of Dharma. If you do sutra recitation together with others, then it is also mindfulness of Sangha. And I think I'm going to point this out maybe in the next slide or soon, that even if you're doing it by yourself, sutra recitation is still a way of practicing mindfulness or recollection of Sangha. Now, one of the reasons for the popularity of the Heart Sutra is because it's so short. and since it's short, the Heart Sutra is a very easy way of gaining the benefits that come from doing sutra recitation. So what are the benefits of sutra recitation? What's that all about? Now, according to Zen Master Sheng Yen, let's see. Oh yeah, I do. And this is a link to where I've got a couple of quotes from Zen Master Sheng Yen. It was a very interesting modern Chinese Zen master, also a Pure Land teacher as well. Always good to find stuff from him because he really provides a very interesting bridge between genuine Buddhism as it's actually practiced by actual Buddhists in Asia, in particular in China, and even more specifically in Taiwan, which is where he was based before he died. But a bridge between that and Western Zen. He was very active in teaching Westerners as well. Anyway, so according to Zen Master Sheng, the benefits of sutra recitation are illuminating the mind, comprehending the teachings, cultivating concentration, propagating the dharma, protecting the dharma, delivering the deceased, and praying for blessings. Reading sutras is not only a way to improve oneself, but also a means for Buddhist education and propagating the dharma. It is indeed a method that benefits both the self and others. And here, if you click on this, and so if you're watching this on YouTube again, which is what I assume if you're seeing this, there will be a link to the PowerPoint slides in the description of the YouTube video, and you can click on this link. Zen Master Hui Neng. Okay, I wanted to get to this. Sutra recitation and Zen. Well, what does sutra recitation have to do with Zen? Well, Zen Master Hui Neng, the famous sixth ancestor of Zen, and after Bodhidharma, Hui Neng is probably the single most important teacher. So Shakyamuni Buddha gets place of honor as the most important teacher in the history of Zen because he's the original Zen master. Mahakashapa probably gets, he's probably number 2. Maybe Ananda is 3, but usually we think of Zen as the Zen that is closer to us, the Zen once it came to China, the Zen once it started to become something that was actually called Zen, which didn't happen until these teachings came to China. And then you're talking about people like Bodhidharma and Hui Neng. And Hui Neng was and of course, speaking of Bodhidharma only brought 3 things with him from China. He brought his robe, and he brought a sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. Now, Hui Neng became the 6th ancestor of Zen in China, that is, maybe the 36th since the time of the Buddha. I think Bodhidharma was 28. I don't know. I'm probably off by 1 there. Maybe 35th. Anyway, Hui Neng was the 6th ancestor in China, and he had his first great enlightenment experience when he heard a monk reciting the Dharma Sutra. So this monk, who was a student of the 5th ancestor, Hung Ren, who became Hui Neng's teacher, this monk was reciting the Dharma Sutra because he was instructed to do so by his teacher, the 5th ancestor. And so this is an excellent example of what Zen Master Sheng Yen was talking about, the benefit of propagating the Dharma. Sutra recitation is also an important practice in Theravada Buddhism as well. So it isn't just in Mahayana Buddhism, sometimes, this is something that Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism definitely have in common. They both highly revere the teachings of the Buddha, the sutras, or as they're called in Theravada Buddhism because they use Pali, the suttas. And sutta recitation is also a very important practice in Theravada Buddhism, whereas it's not just a practice for the monks and nuns in their temples who chant the sutras, but also lay people do this. The most important, the most common, I should say, and you could also say the most important book for a lay Theravada Buddhist to own is a book of Parita chants. And here's one right here. You can buy one from Amazon. These are special chants that are done for blessing and protection, and they're a part of the daily practice of lay and monastic Theravada Buddhists. You can get this one for $10 on Amazon. I do not have this book. I can't speak to its quality, but I'll bet it's good. I like its cover because sutra recitation is a universal practice among all Buddhists and always has been. Even when you do this practice by yourself, you are doing very strong together action. You're doing together action with every practicing Buddhist who's ever lived when you do chanting practice. There, sutra recitation or chanting practice. How's that for together action? Now, of course, sutra recitation should not be done mindlessly. Now in the story about Hui Neng, Hui Neng heard I can't even remember which line it was, but there's a line, and this story is probably just between you and me, this story is probably not true, about Huineng and the student chanting the Diamond Sutra. But it's a great story nevertheless, and it contains great truth. The story goes that Huineng, who at the time was not Huineng because that was his monastic name, and he didn't become a monk until many, many, many years later. His name was Lu, I think, Mr. Lu. So Mr. Lu heard this guy chanting, and he heard just one line from the sutra, the Diamond Sutra. And he went up to this monk who was chanting and asked him to explain. And the monk said, if you want an explanation, you got to go talk to my teacher. So that doesn't mean that the monk was chanting it mindlessly, but he just, so in order to, before you should ever pretend or claim to be able to teach about a sutra, you better, it's better not to. It's like in this class. I'm not saying I understand the Heart Sutra. I'm providing you with some information that might be helpful to practicing the Heart Sutra and sharing my experience about practicing and studying the Heart Sutra, but I make no great claims about deep insights into the profound meaning of the Prajnaparamita. Okay, but even just the act of reciting a sutra, even without any deep understanding of the meaning, this is already a powerful practice. According to Zen Master Sheng Yen, again, constantly reading the sutras is analogous to continuously illuminating your mind with a bright mirror. Your vexations and ignorance will gradually diminish. But at the same time, Sheng Yen also says that we should be gaining an understanding of the meaning of the words as we're doing our sutra recitation practice. Each time you read the sutra, you would comprehend a little more about the profound meaning behind the archaic words. And it's funny that he uses this phrasing because, of course, Zen Master Sheng Yen, being a native-born Chinese person, a native speaker of Chinese, learned to read and write Chinese from a very, very early age. The Chinese in the Heart Sutra and in any of the sutras is very old, very archaic, very old, beyond old-fashioned. It's a special literary classical form of Chinese that is quite different in many ways from the ordinary spoken Chinese of modern-day native speakers of Chinese. And so even for someone who is a native speaker of Chinese, reading these sutras in Chinese is a challenge. In addition to just reading and reciting the sutras, we can also and should study them. In the case of the Heart Sutra, we can study in two ways. So now I'm transitioning from just talking about reciting the Heart Sutra and the benefits of reciting the Heart Sutra. And one of the benefits of reciting the Heart Sutra is that with enough time, some of the meaning will begin to kind of rub off, maybe. But you should also make an effort to actually study and not just repeat the words in the hopes that eventually it'll make some sense. In the case of the Heart Sutra, we can study the Heart Sutra in two ways. One is obviously to read books or listen to teachings specifically about the Heart Sutra. But since the subject of the Heart Sutra is so broad, and in many ways the Heart Sutra encompasses the entire Prajnaparamita teachings, which is already a very vast amount of teachings. The Prajnaparamita teachings themselves are also considered to be, in many ways, the core of all of Mahayana Buddhist teachings. And Mahayana Buddhist teachings are, for a Mahayana Buddhist, they are the essence of the teachings of the Buddha. So really, you can, and you actually should, if you're studying the Heart Sutra, you should be connecting all Buddhist teachings to the Heart Sutra. And so that's one way of sorting through all the different things around that claim to be commentaries or explanations of the Heart Sutra, is that they really should be using the Heart Sutra to present and explain basic Buddhist teachings. And basic Buddhist teachings as they are put into practice. Now, one very important example of this kind of a commentary was written by a guy named Kuiji, who was a student of Xuanzang. Now, Xuanzang, that when we talk about the Heart Sutra, especially if you talk about the Heart Sutra in Chinese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Vietnamese Buddhism, the Heart Sutra means Xuanzang's Heart Sutra. Xuanzang lived, 1500 years ago, traveled to India, studied with Indian Buddhist teachers, gathered many sutras and explanations and teachings and texts and brought them back to China. And one of the things that he did when he came back to China was he taught young students what he had learned, and one of them was Kuiji, this guy named Kuiji. And one of the things that Xuanzang brought back with him was the Heart Sutra. And the Heart Sutra, there are other versions of the Heart Sutra. I'm probably not going to talk about that too much in this class, but whenever people are reciting the Heart Sutra, again, in China, all of China, in Japan, in Korea, in Vietnam, when people there are reciting the Heart Sutra, they're reciting Xuanzang's Heart Sutra. They're reciting the 260 characters in, for whatever reason, in the Japanese version, they add 2 extra characters that have no, do not in any way change the meaning of the Heart Sutra. But they take the 260 characters that Xuanzang wrote down, and that is what is chanted in all of China, Japan, Vietnam, and Korea to this day. And so we can refer to Xuanzang's Heart Sutra, even though, in fact, the historical validity of ascribing these 260 characters to Xuanzang is questioned by many scholars, and not for no reason. But when you refer to Xuanzang's Heart Sutra, everybody knows exactly which 260 characters you are referring to. Oh, speaking of the 260 characters in Xuanzang's Heart Sutra, and speaking of Kuiji and his commentary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. There are 9 characters here. Heng Shimbanya Baramilta Shi. Okay. That is right out of the Sino-Korean Heart Sutra, which we chanted at the beginning, and we'll chant this again at the end of the second session. We've got about another 8 minutes to go in the first session, I think, if I'm getting my timing right. And then we'll take a 5-minute break and come back and do another 35 minutes or so. But Kuiji, these are his dates, and this is how his name is written in Chinese characters. If you want to find important people in the history of Chinese Buddhism or Japanese Buddhism or Vietnamese Buddhism or Korean Buddhism, you really need to find the characters that are their name. That's the only way to make sure you're talking about the right Kuiji or the right whoever. So he learned Sanskrit from Xuanzang and collaborated with Xuanzang on one of Xuanzang's most important works, The Demonstration of Consciousness Only, the Cheng Wei Shi Lun, which is a comprehensive treatise on Yogacara philosophy based on Vasubandhu's 30 verses on consciousness only, which is something I do not claim any. It's not only do not I claim any expertise in it, I don't claim any much understanding of it, if any, at all. The Kuiji also produced a large number of works on his own, including his commentary on the Heart Sutra. So fortunately, this is very fortunate that there is a good English translation of Kuiji's commentary, and I believe it's available for free download at the BDK America .org website. Here's a link. I think if you follow this link, you'll find a free. You can purchase it from them. Nice, you get a nice copy of it. But it's really fortunate that we have this. This is a very interesting commentary, and I think it really does what a commentary on the Heart Sutra should do. And so it's not that long, which is kind of nice. I mean, the Heart Sutra itself is not that long. Oh yeah, the two translators, Shi Hengqing and Dan Lusthaus. Shi Hengqing is a Chinese, I believe she's Chinese, Buddhist nun and educator. And Dan Lusthaus is actually one of the is a prominent Buddhologist, Western Buddhologist. One of his areas of specialty is Yogacara philosophy, or consciousness only. And it's wonderful that they did this translation and that it is available from BDK America. Of the 125 pages in this commentary, over half of it is on just these 9 characters. And 9 characters. 6 of the characters are Prajnaparamita, Prajnaparamita. So 6 of the characters are the subject, and it's practicing deeply when. This she here is when, put at the end of this phrase. When practicing deeply Prajnaparamita. That's what these 9 characters mean. You could alternatively, and this is how the translators of this commentary translate this part of the Heart Sutra, they say, when practicing the profound Prajnaparamita. And as I think I mentioned earlier in this class, both of those translations are worthwhile. They're both true. It may not be, one could argue over which one Xuanzang actually meant. Good luck in proving that one way or another. Maybe someone who knows more about Chinese linguistics and would be able to prove it, but I can't tell the difference. Anyway, so in his commentary on these 9 characters, Kuiji talks about a wide variety of topics, all related to what it means to practice Prajnaparamita. So what does it mean to practice Prajnaparamita? So at the beginning of this section, Kuiji approaches this very thorny subject of how and why to teach about emptiness. And I'm going to get back to this, but at this point, Kuiji tells an interesting story about Shariputra. Now, Shariputra is kind of the one of the 2 main characters in the Heart Sutra. There's Guanjaje, aka Avalokiteshvara, but Avalokiteshvara is not called Avalokiteshvara in the Heart Sutra. In the Heart Sutra, Avalokiteshvara is called Guanjaje. Okay. And actually, in Kuiji, and I'm not going to talk about this except to mention it right now, Kuiji actually has several pages in his commentary on the name Guanjaje, and why this name is used and what the name means. And that's quite interesting as well. Very, very worth reading what Kuiji says about that. But when and that comes right before the section, because it's Guanjaje Bosa Hengshim Banya Bada Milta Shi. That's so the Guanjaje is the one who is practicing the profound Prajnaparamita. And so to kind of explain why is Shariputra here, and this is one thing that people often talk about when they're saying, there's a lot of reasons why the Heart Sutra is kind of strange. And one of the things that's strange about the Heart Sutra is the 2 main characters. The Buddha is not speaking. It's Avalokiteshvara speaking, and that's strange. I believe this is the only Prajnaparamita. There's lots of Prajnaparamita sutras. The reason why the Heart Sutra is called the Heart Sutra is because the heart of the Prajnaparamita teachings. Most of the Prajnaparamita sutras are very, very long. They're measured in thousands of lines, and often they're just titled the Prajnaparamita Sutra in 25,000 lines, the Prajnaparamita Sutra in 8,000 lines, etc. But the Heart Sutra is called the Heart Sutra because it's the heart of all of these sutras. And actually, I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. Kuiji makes a point of talking about why it's called the Heart Sutra as well. But he also wants to explain. First, he explains who Guanjia is and what her name means, and then he starts talking about Shariputra, the other main character, and yeah, so I am gonna stop now. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll get back to this. This is a really interesting story. This is a very important point, and it really does explain what Shariputra is doing. Yeah, it explains his role in the Heart Sutra in a very nice way, I think. Okay, so I'm going to briefly stop sharing. Let's see if I can get out of this presentation mode. Yeah, good. And I'm going to put up a timer on the screen, and then I'll be back in Hi, welcome back. Where were we? Oh yeah, we were talking about something about the Heart Sutra, I think, wasn't it? Let's see. How far have we gotten? We were up to, I'm gonna share my screen again, bring up some slides. And here we are. Oh yeah, next slide. Alright, I'm going to go into from the current slide and alright, good. Okay, so we're just beginning to talk about where in Kuiji's commentary, and this is really the only part of the commentary that I'm going to spend any real time on. I hope to be able to talk about one or two other things that Kuiji says in his commentary, but I really want to focus on this section, which is over half of the commentary, where he talks about the practice, the Guanjaje's practice of the profound Prajnaparamita, or Guanjaje's deep practice of the Prajnaparamita. And to really, so one of the problems with talking about the Heart Sutra is that the main subject of the Heart Sutra is shunyata, emptiness. And in kind of a very, I think Kuiji does this very skillfully. He inserts his story about Shariputra at just this point, when he's really trying to ease into so it can when the subject is shunyata, it always feels like it's hitting you over the head, in my opinion. But Kuiji is trying to be as gentle and as possible in bringing this up and bringing us into the subject. So the story of Shariputra's past life, the story of Shariputra's past life that Guanjaje is referring to, there's a slide on it that will be the next one. It goes into it a little bit more detail, but basically he's talking about a point where Shariputra, in a past life, for many countless past lives, he had been on the Bodhisattva path. Now, of course, Shariputra famously was one of the Shravaka students of the Buddha, one of the hearers, one of the to use the very politically incorrect term now, a Hinayana followers of the Buddha. And in some sutras, in particular, infamously to some people, the Vimalakirti Sutra, Shariputra is treated with tremendous disrespect in the Vimalakirti Sutra. If you read Thich Nhat Hanh's commentaries on the Vimalakirti Sutra and the Lotus Sutra, Thich Nhat Hanh makes a point of saying that in his opinion, the Vimalakirti Sutra and other sutras that are very hostile, openly hostile in a very aggressive way towards the Hinayana teachings, toward the Shravakayana followers of the Buddha, that they go too far. Or if you, they go too far unless you make certain to also read the Lotus Sutra and other sutras that emphasize the one vehicle teaching, and the Lotus Sutra in particular. Shariputra is brought onto the Bodhisattva path in the Lotus Sutra, and that's also what's happening here in the Heart Sutra as well. Anyway, the specific case of Shariputra, Guanjaje is teaching him in order to rekindle the flame of bodhicitta, to gently bring Shariputra. Sometimes I spell it with an SH and sometimes with an S, or sometimes there might be, the more fancified ways of having diacritical marks over the S. It's just Shariputra. But back onto the Bodhisattva path. Kuiji spent some time sorting through, and I'm going to get back to this. He just kind of references the story about Shariputra, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in just a minute. But Kuiji moves on from kind of helping to set the scene by giving us some understanding of why Shariputra is here. Then Kuiji spent some time sorting through various non-dual formulations about emptiness and practice, including things like, speaking of the Vimalakirti Sutra, in the Vimalakirti Sutra says that non-practice is enlightenment because there should be no conceptualization. Blah, whatever the hell that means. But soon the clouds part, and Kuiji tells us more clearly, it is the illness of erroneous conceptualization that should be eliminated, not the dharma. If there are fundamentally no dharmas that can be practiced or form which one can sever attachment, then those ignorant of the dharma will claim that they are already enlightened. And this is so there's a Zen master Xuanzang, my teacher's teacher, was very fond of telling the story of the person who shows up at the zendo, smoking a cigarette, walks into the meditation room, doesn't take his shoes off, walks straight up to the altar, smoking a cigarette, clomping on with his shoes, and flicks his cigarette, dropping ashes on the Buddha. There's a great book of teachings from Zen Master Xuanzang with that title, Dropping Ashes on the Buddha. And this is a Zen Master Xuanzang used that as an important koan in his teaching. How can you help someone who is in this situation, who's heard, who's gotten the wrong end of the shunyata stick, and thinks that they're enlightened, wrongly claiming to be enlightened? They will cause themselves great harm. Since the and then this is a famous analogy that's used in many Mahayana Buddhist teachings. Flowers in the sky, which is referring to people who have cataracts and they see patches and things that aren't there, that are a side effect of their cataracts. It's true that so due to the cataracts, since the substance of the flowers due to the cataracts of the eyes is empty, that is what you're seeing isn't there. The substance is empty. The flowers are not what needs to be cured. So since the flowers are empty, that doesn't mean that nothing needs to be done. Since these flowers do not exist, how can they be eliminated? However, if the cataract is not eliminated, there will be no healthy eye. How does the ultimate truth reveal that the sky flower is essentially empty? If there is nothing that is to be practiced and nothing that is not practiced, and if the unenlightened state of sentient beings is nothing other than enlightenment, then all beings should have been enlightened from beginningless time. However, from the very beginning, they are not enlightened. Surprise, surprise. So who is it that is enlightened? This is like the presumption of non-action of the heretics, which contradict reason and violate the doctrine. How can they accomplish the wisdom of enlightenment? Indeed. Okay. All right. Now, the story about Shariputra, before continuing on with Kuiji's commentary. It comes from, or at least there's one source that comes from Nagarjuna. There's other sources for this story. There's other versions of this story, and there's other ways of pronouncing Nagarjuna's name, for that matter. Nagarjuna, I don't know. The treatise on the great Prajnaparamita, which in turn is a commentary on the Prajnaparamita Sutra in 25,000 lines, and an English translation of selections of this is made available by Dharma Mitra, who's a Buddhist monk and a translator who produces really wonderful translations. I highly recommend his translation of the Avatamsaka Sutra. I only have 2 out of 3 volumes of it so far, but if you're interested in the Avatamsaka Sutra, you should read Dharma Mitra's translation of it, which you can't download for free. But this one you can. These excerpts from his translations of excerpts from from Nagarjuna's treatise on the great Prajnaparamita, you can download. Click on this link and you get the PDF. Question: what is meant by the fulfillment of dana paramita? Answer: This means to cross the river of giving and to succeed in reaching the other shore. Question: what is meant by failing to reach the other shore? Answer: it is analogous. So I should have put answer here, but I didn't. I thought I did before. I thought I caught this before the class started. Answer: is analogous to crossing over a river, but returning before having arrived. This is what is meant by failing to reach the other shore. For example, Shariputra cultivated the Bodhisattva way for a period of 60 kalpas, desiring to cross over the river of giving. And so, if you didn't know, the very first step on the Bodhisattva path, we're going to talk about this a little bit, is cultivation of the paramita of generosity, that is giving, or dana paramita. He cultivated the, he sought to, at the time, he cultivated the Bodhisattva way of period, desiring to cross over the river of giving. Okay. At that time, there was a beggar who came along and demanded that Shariputra give him one of his eyes. Shariputra said the eye would then be useless if I would just pull it out and give it to you. It wouldn't do you any good. What do you want it for? If you need something, I'll give it to you. If you want me to do something for you, if you want to put my body to use, if you want any of my valuables, I'll give those to you. The beggar got mad. He said, I have no use for your body. I don't want any valuables you might own. I just want an eye. That's all. If you are truly a cultivator of the practice of giving, then I'd receive an eye from you. And so Shariputra pulls out one of his eyes and gives it to him. The beggar took the eye and sniffed it and said it stinks. And then he spat on it, he threw it on the ground, and then he stepped on it. Shariputra said to himself, it's a difficult task to cross over, that is to help to cross over such base people as this. He actually had no use for the eye, and yet he's forcefully demanded it. Having gotten it, he not only threw it away, he even smashed it with his foot. How extremely base. People of this sort cannot be crossed over to liberation. And at that point, Shariputra, who had been cultivating the Bodhisattva way, left the Bodhisattva way and decided from then on, until he met Guanjaje, to just work on his own liberation. Okay. Now, a little bit after this, so I'm skipping a little bit. I'm skipping a little bit ahead. I'm trying to give a condensation of this part of the commentary. But having stated, and let me just back up just a bit. Okay, having stated that if there is nothing to be practiced, then what's the point? So there is something to be practiced. What is to be practiced? And why do we practice? The qualities of the Buddha, supreme and boundless, cannot be attained without extensive practice. Consequently, a practitioner should possess the two natures, Gotra, articulated in Mahayana Buddhism, in order to cultivate step by step the 5 stages of practice leading to enlightenment. The two natures are innate nature, that is, what I think most modern American English-speaking Zen Buddhists would immediately say, oh, Buddha nature, right? Our innate nature, which means the fundamental consciousness, alaya vijnana, which is the way a good Yogacaran would put it, I guess, that is capable of producing innately all sorts of uncontaminated activities. Buddha nature. Okay, and to acquired nature, which is obtained through the perfuming, and this is in the translation. I think this may be an accurate translation, but I'm not. I can kind of imagine what is being said here, but it's not particularly good English. Okay, and a good translation should be good English. I'm just saying, but which is obtained through good English, as in a native speaker of English should be able to understand what's being said, and you can, without kind of squinting your eyes and thinking about it. And this is not the way. Nobody speaks this way, right? Which is obtained through perfuming upon hearing the true Dharma. So it has something to do with hearing the Dharma and being perfumed or influenced or taking on the scent of the Dharma. At least that seems to be what it's saying. But it's acquired. It happens. It's not something that you innately have. It's an acquired nature. However, people, and then it goes on quite a bit, however, people still abide in cyclic existence because they have not yet met truly beneficial friends to explain enlightenment to them. Even if they have met such people, they grasp the skillful means of training erroneously, or they learn so slowly that their roots of virtue do not mature. Hence, they continue in the cycle of samsara. Now, so after one enters the 5 stages, so let's assume that this doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. And what about those who are able to enter into, practice, who do not grasp onto wrong ideas about training, and who do not practice so slowly that their roots of virtue cannot mature? After one enters the 5 stages of practice leading to enlightenment, the boundless, supreme, wholesome Dharma to be practiced is called acquired nature. And what are the 5 paths? So the 5 paths, and I say this up here in the class on the mantra, the Heart Sutra mantra, we looked at some of the Dalai Lama's commentary on the mantra, and part of his commentary on the mantra was that the mantra shows the 5 paths, the same 5 paths that that Kuiji is now introducing in talking about practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, the very beginning of the Heart Sutra. The path of accumulation, the path of intensified effort, which in the Dalai Lama's version of these paths he calls the path of preparation, which is a more standard way if you are familiar with the Tibetan Buddhist presentation of the 5 paths, that usually call the path of preparation. The path of penetrating understanding is how Kuiji refers to it. The Dalai Lama would refer to this as the path of seeing. The path of cultivation, also known as the path of meditation in the Dalai Lama's version, or generally speaking in the Tibetan version. And the path of ultimate realization, or no more learning, is what it's called in the Dalai Lama's version of things. Let's see. I'm having a little trouble with my cursor. I'm going to have to probably stop sharing. Yeah, my PowerPoint has gotten kind of messed up. Actually, I might even need to stop, if I can, stop the recording. Let's see. Okay, so I think the problem that I'm having is a simple battery problem. So I'm going to stop the recording just very briefly. Stop sharing. Can I? Yeah. Oh, what happened? Here I am. All right, good. Recording is still going on. I'm going to stop the recording real briefly and change the battery on my mouse. How mundane. This is okay. I'm back, and hopefully, let's see. Hopefully, my oh yeah, that didn't really do it, did it? But anyway, I'll be able to carry on. I just want to test. Yes. Hello. Okay, good. Testing. All systems seem to be pretty much going. I'm gonna come back. Oh, here we are. Hopefully I didn't. Yeah. Good. Okay, so we were talking about something. It was something to do with the Heart Sutra, wasn't it? Let's see. Here we are, and here is. All right. So, from the current slide, and all right, good. Almost good. Just gotta. Okay. Now, so this part of Kuiji's commentary can be compared to the Dalai Lama's commentary on the Heart Sutra mantra. It's kind of interesting that Kuiji is introducing this. So, as I already mentioned, this part of the commentary is the majority of it. He spends most of his commentary talking about this one phrase, practicing the profound Prajnaparamita. And it's interesting that this coincides closely with how the Dalai Lama presents his commentary on the Heart Sutra mantra. And the Heart Sutra mantra is one of the best ways to practice Prajnaparamita, by reciting the Heart Sutra mantra. This is, after all, this is a series of classes on the subject of traditional Buddhist chanting, and mantra recitation is one of the ways of doing traditional Buddhist chanting. Although usually with mantras, you don't want to just do the mantra, or ideally you don't want to just do the mantra. The mantra should have some container for it. And so and this is kind of the take-home message of the class previously on the Heart Sutra mantra. The Heart Sutra itself is the container for the Heart Sutra mantra. And so the 5 paths, the five paths is kind of an interesting teaching. This is the Bodhisattva path. This is one of the ways of presenting the path to Buddhahood, is to talk about the 5 paths. If you complete these 5 paths, you're a Buddha. Or, I don't know, there might be, it depends. So a lot of times people say that there's like an 11th, 12th, and 13th bhumi, maybe. I don't know. I'm still working on the first bhumi. Okay, so at this point, a person may know the 5 stages, yes, but so what? How do they put it into practice? Any practitioner who wishes to gain enlightenment and to perform deeds of great benefit should first bring forth the mind of great enlightenment, bodhicitta. And so, among a lot of times in Western Zen, people don't necessarily use the term bodhicitta. But you hear the phrase, the mind of great enlightenment, the enlightenment mind, the mind of enlightenment, enlightening mind, awakening mind, awakened mind. Personally, I think it's better to just use the Sanskrit word bodhicitta, just to be clear what we're talking about, because that is what we're talking about. We're talking about bodhicitta. And this, so one of my, and I certainly don't know enough Chinese to be able to. I do have access to the Chinese text of this commentary, which everybody does. It's in the Chinese. Chinese Buddhist English Text Association, CBETA. They have it online for free, and I'll put a link to it in the description for this video. But a lot of times Kuiji is presenting things in terms of first you do this, then you do this, and I wouldn't say you have to. You certainly should begin to bring forth the mind of bodhicitta before actually engaging in practice. I don't know if that's really the best way of putting it, but that's the way Kuiji has put it, and he probably knows better than I do. Just as the first drop of water in the great ocean can be the abode of jewels, similarly, this initial aspiration can be the source of the wholesome dharmas of the five vehicles. Again, just as the initial formation of the world is the source for supporting sentient beings, so this mind is the support and foundation for innumerable varieties of beings on the five paths. All that by way of saying, you really need bodhicitta, okay? And one of the reasons why I hesitate to, fully endorse this particular way of talking about bodhicitta, that you have to have it first, is because if someone is drawn to practice, I don't want to tell them, oh, hey, well, wait, do you have bodhicitta? Or first stop, but it is something that is needed. It is absolutely needed in order to practice bodhicitta. What causes a person to generate the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta? Which the Dalai Lama, he calls, how does he call it? Anyway, the causes are seeing and hearing about the super. This is a bad translation. I'm going to come right out and say it. This is a bad translation. Seeing and hearing about the supernatural powers of the Buddhas. This is Shentong. This is a phrase that shows up in a lot of Mahayana sutras. It doesn't mean it includes magical powers, yeah, but that's not the real meaning of this. Supernatural powers is not a good English translation for the phrase Shentong, which is what's being translated here. There, I said it. Hearing the teachings of bodhisattvas, seeing or hearing that the Buddha Dharma is declining, and realizing that the existence of the Dharma can eliminate great suffering, and seeing people in the final kalpa as being ignorant, shameless, stingy, due to these four causes, a person develops the great aspiration for enlightenment. Kuiji then goes on to talk about the 7 supreme virtues and the 3 profound contemplations. So now you can get really kind of bogged down in all these different lists of the 3 of these and the 4 of those and the 5 of these and the 6 and the 7s and the 4s and the 3s, and usually the lists are embedded in each other. So you start off with a list of 3 things, and each of those 3 things has 4 things. But it's actually there's a lot of good stuff that's in there, and it's worth going through and reading what Kuiji has to say, and looking some of this stuff up, and looking at other sources. And because that's one of the things that Kuiji is doing, he is presenting I don't know if I would say all, but a huge portion of all the teachings of Buddhism by way of commenting on the Heart Sutra, which is the right way to do a commentary on the Heart Sutra. Let's see, did I jump forward? Okay, yeah. Prior to generating the mind of enlightenment, again, I don't particularly like this the ordering of things in time so much, but this is the way that I'm not certain that this is exactly how Kuiji put it in the original Chinese, but this is certainly how it's being translated, and this is one way of looking at it. Prior to generating the mind of enlightenment, one should first be equipped with the 10 supreme virtues. So if someone is ready to practice, I don't think it's appropriate to say, wait, stop, you got to have bodhicitta. And then they say, okay, I'll get some bodhicitta, and say, wait, first, you got to have the 10 supreme virtues and the 3 profound contemplations. These are all good things to know about. And so if you're already studying the Heart Sutra, then you already have begun to have these things, I would say. The 10 supreme virtues are and these are actually, good to look at. Being near beneficial friends. The importance that is placed over and over and over again on the need for spiritual friends, the need for friends in the Dharma. It's all over the place in Buddhist teaching. And here it is, the very first of the supreme virtues, having good friends in the Dharma, making offerings to the Buddhas, accumulating roots of virtue, aspiring, etc. So he just lists these, Kuiji does. And then he goes on to talk about the three profound contemplations, which, at least in terms of the amount of ink that he is willing to expend upon them, he's treating them as more important. And he especially emphasizes the third contemplation, and he ties it back to bodhicitta. Seeing beings such as these, so such as the suffering beings of samsara, one cannot help feeling deep sorrow and will respond by generating one's initial aspiration. I vow to definitely realize unsurpassed supreme enlightenment, anuttara samyak bodhi, in order to benefit all sentient beings. And that is the aspiration of bodhicitta. And so, like I said, there's lots of threes of these and four of these, lots of lists and sublists. And then Kuiji at this point actually gets even a little bit more technical. He starts talking about some specific things in Yogacara, consciousness-only philosophy. But then he kind of suddenly pulls back, and he says, many sutras and sastras have repeatedly explained the principles of consciousness only, yet excessive explanations should be avoided, lest the reader lose interest. Right at the point where I was about to lose interest, he says this, okay? And I thought, oh, good. Examining carefully the sacred teachings that expound the doctrine of consciousness only, we find that altogether there are numerous kinds. They can be categorized into 5. So there are 5 kinds of teachings, or Kuiji also calls them 5 kinds of contemplations or practices of consciousness only. What are they? Eradicating the false and maintaining the true, rejecting the false and preserving the true, gathering the branches into the root, concealing the inferior and revealing the superior, eradicating forms and realizing its self-nature. And Kuiji, here I'm just listing them. Kuiji does go into much more detail. He gives lots of quotes. Often it's not clear where the quotes are coming from. Sometimes at least once he mentions the Vimalakirti Sutra, at least once he references Vasubandhu's 30 verses on consciousness only. And like I said, he also refers to them as contemplations or vipassanas. The next several pages are taken up by a pretty technical discussion of what that Kuiji refers to as a brief presentation of practice. After this brief presentation of practice, Kuiji asks, what is the expanded exposition of practice? It consists of 3 aspects. What is taught, the dharma of cultivating the teachings, and the one able to cultivate the teachings. First of all, one should know what is taught. One should rely on that teaching, and finally, one methodically accomplishes what he is able to cultivate from the teachings. Thus, all 3 aspects are included in the bodhisattva practice. Okay, and then again, this is a list that includes sublists. Here's a nice picture of Kuiji. So I'm just going to jump ahead to the good part. Okay, the 6 paramitas. So so like I said, this part of Kuiji's commentary is over half of the entire commentary on the entire Heart Sutra. And in this section of the commentary on practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, the heart of that really is Kuiji's discussion of the 6 paramitas. Okay, now this slide is out of place. Okay. Well, this slide is a lot out of place, but I do want to go back to the story again. Initially, Shariputra developed great aspiration. Oh, okay, no. But okay, so this is worth mentioning that there's a similar story about Shariputra. But yeah, this slide is out of place. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so now Kuiji talks about the first paramita. He has quite a bit to say about the first paramita, the paramita of generosity, which is relevant to the story of Shariputra, although it's not where Kuiji puts it into the story. The second paramita of discipline. The third paramita, actually, Kuiji has a lot to say about the paramita of patience. This is a nice conclusion to his discussion of the paramita of patience. One becomes mortified upon losing patience and realizes that patience is the cause of peace and happiness in life. Patience eradicates non-virtuous action, leads to peace and happiness, and allows one to approach the end of one's life without regret. It leads to excellent future rebirths without hatred or enemies, and eventually to the realization of unsurpassed enlightenment. One also sees the suffering that results from impatience. Therefore, one practices patience oneself, and through praise and encouragement teaches others to do the same. Oh, here's a nice picture of... Who is this? This is Jijang Bosal, also known as Kshitigarbha. And I have a picture of Kshitigarbha here because in the fourth paramita, in his what he has to say about the fourth paramita, Kuiji, has this to say on one generates a courageous attitude and dons the armor of this pledge. Now, in order to liberate even one being from suffering, I am willing to stay in the hells, even though one day and night in hell is equal to 1,000 great kalpas. If I have to stay in the hells hundreds of thousands of times before I attain enlightenment, I will do so without regret or becoming discouraged, much less stay for a short time and undergo only a little suffering. If one can summon even a little faith and understanding of this practice, one creates innumerable causes for the attainment of great enlightenment. How much more so if one perfects the practice? Therefore, one practices virtue without the least cowardice. So don't be a coward, right? Who wants to be a coward? And so I've running out of time. I did kind of go through even though I said that, and I'm encouraging people to read this. Okay, I've made some slides about it. I've kind of talked it up, but you should read it. And if you're reading it and your eyes start to glaze over, maybe you can come and look at the slides that I've done, or maybe you can send me an email, or we can talk about it. It's good stuff. This is, by the time Kuiji gets to the fifth paramita of meditation, concentration, dhyana, that is Zen, this is what he has to say. It's actually short, so I put the whole thing. This is the quote from the entire section on concentration. Concentration, dhyana, means first hearing and reflecting on the dharma and then stabilizing the mind one-pointedly. There are three types of concentration. First is tranquil concentration, which delightedly fixes on actual phenomena. This means that by eliminating discrimination, distractions, and attachment, one is able to develop quietude, equanimity, and samadhi. Second is tranquil concentration, manifesting supernatural abilities. And again, this is probably a terrible translation, although partially accurate, but mostly bad. This refers to the stabilization that brings forth supernormal powers. Again, so you really have to take a step back whenever you encounter translations that use the word supernatural or supernormal, and for one thing, ask, what do these even mean, and what could they possibly mean in a Buddhist context? they are translating something that is genuine Buddhist teaching. Some people will say, oh, the Buddha didn't teach anything about supernatural or supernormal stuff, which in some ways might be true. But whatever it is that is being translated here as supernatural or supernormal, the Buddha did teach. So it's important to kind of cut through the weeds of words here. Third is tranquil concentration that benefits beings. This is so called because it achieves their benefit, happiness, and samadhi. Due to tranquil concentration, one can accomplish skill in mantras to prevent calamities, eradicate epidemics, produce rain, eradicate fear, and bestow food and wealth. That sounds good, right? One can admonish others to abandon idleness, etc. So anyway, one has prophecy, all serious obstruction. One is able to eradicate all serious obstructions forever. Okay, and then the section on Prajnaparamita is itself quite long, quite detailed, and quite above my pay grade. Okay, to explain it to anyone. He gives a definition of wisdom. He goes through the four all-embracing virtues, which are giving, kind speech, beneficial conduct, and working with others. This section is actually pretty interesting to look at these all-embracing virtues. He talks about the importance of making offerings. This is also quite interesting to read. Staying near beneficial friends. So far, it's not getting too often when, even though I didn't feel up to, really trying to break down what he's saying. This is good stuff. The four immeasurables. Now, unfortunately, by the time he gets to the four immeasurables and the four reliances, it does start getting, at least to me, quite complicated and difficult. The 10 bhumis, the 10 supreme practices, the 10 grave obscurations, the 10 aspects of suchness. You might recall in the class on the Heart Sutra mantra. We also touched on this as well. Barbara O'Brien brought up, where there's a quote from Barbara O'Brien's excellent book, The Circle of the Way, in which she brings up the 10 aspects of suchness. I think when she's talking about the Heart Sutra mantra. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but I do remember that in one of the classes we talked about Barbara O'Brien and the 10 aspects of suchness. The four qualities that a bodhisattva should practice with, and the 7 kinds of mercy. There's probably more. Let's see. Because a compassionate mind is blissful and pure, one with such a mind is very kind to sentient beings, is benevolent toward them, tirelessly endures suffering for them, and is very patient with them. Due to one's practice and the influence of compassion, there is nothing internal or external that a bodhisattva is reluctant to give away, and there is no wisdom that cannot be attained. Since the enlightenment of a bodhisattva is based on compassion, one is able to endure all the sufferings of cyclic existence. That's from page 67. That's pretty good. Huh? Okay. One of the things that Kuiji says, and I think I'm going to probably end with this. Yes, this is the last slide. Okay, and then we'll do the Heart Sutra. Okay. And the Heart Sutra, and this is Kuiji. Heart, Hridaya, signifies essence and excellence because the Prajnaparamita Sutra, that's all of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, are voluminous and extensive in meaning. Those who receive, uphold, transmit, or study it may easily become discouraged. Therefore, the sages, for the purpose of propagating the Dharma, captured the supreme essence by composing this condensed sutra. And so, what Kuiji is basically saying here is that the Heart Sutra was not originally one of these Prajnaparamita Sutras. It was come up with later as a condensation of the much bigger, longer, more difficult, at least to get through, to read through, Heart Sutra is easy to get through, not so easy to understand. Consequently, yeah. Oh yeah, the three divisions and the two prefaces, that is, this is basically saying the Heart Sutra doesn't begin the way a normal sutra begins, and it doesn't end the way a normal sutra is supposed to end, which is one reason why some people say it's not really a sutra. The most subtle and essential elements of the Prajnaparamita Sutra were selected as the main points to be mentioned. Although this sutra contains various teachings, it mainly articulates that form itself is emptiness. It encompasses thousands of doctrines running, some of which we've talked about, right? Some of these thousands of doctrines, running through the principle of no knowledge to that of attainment. It explores the profound purpose of the Prajnaparamita Sutra and elucidates its essence, hence it is called heart. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing for just a second so I can find I can get, there we go. Really having some technical difficulties here, for which I apologize. Okay, good. And now we'll do the Heart Sutra to end. Thanks for everybody for listening, and I'll see you around.
Mahavanya